Thank you, Rob, and thank you everyone for this discussion prior to the meeting starting. I want to welcome everyone to our open table, a gathering of the Coalition to End Homelessness, where you're a member if you're committed to ending homelessness and to engaging others with respect. Today, as all days, we gather on the homelands of the Puyallup tribe of Indians who have stewarded this coastal home for thousands of years. We honor their stewardship and challenge ourselves to respect their wisdom and warnings about the earth we share. That we're so unprepared for the extremes of weather in our, quote, temperate Pacific Northwest shows that we haven't respected either the wisdom or the warnings very well. And neighbors living in tents or vehicles on our streets bear deep consequences in their bodies and their spirits, especially in today's weather where it's 26 degrees in Tacoma right now with clear sky and sun, but feels like 18 degrees because of the wind. High mountain climbers with -0 rated sleeping bags may feel protected in such temperatures, but that's not the situation here. Today, my subject is blankets. Yesterday morning, after the daily inclement weather briefing, Teresa said to me, "People are really desperate for blankets." We had a few and planned to pass them on. I set out for the Goodwill outlet store to see what I could find. I found some, we shared them. Important to do, but small comfort in this cold. Blankets protect, comfort, and cover. Early 20th century poet T.E. Holm called on a powerful image for comfort, asking the divine to, quote, "Make small the old star-eaten blanket of the sky, that I may fold it round me and in comfort lie." And much before the 20th century, members of Jewish and Christian faith communities took comfort in the words of a psalm with the image of being sheltered by the divine who would cover them with the warm feathers of protective wings. These thoughts would not likely move contemporary poet Margaret Atwood, who looked at the month of February, this time of frozen days, and imagined a different comfort. She said, "February, month of despair, with a skewered heart in the center. I think dire thoughts and lust for French fries with a splash of vinegar." I've felt that way too, but this morning, blankets suggest a way to center us on our commitment to connect and mobilize to act. I start with definitions. Blanket as a noun, a large, usually oblong piece of woven fabric used as a bed covering, or something that resembles a blanket, like a blanket of fog or a blanket of gloom. Blanket as a verb, to cover with or as if with a blanket. New grass blankets the slope. Or to cover so as to obscure, interrupt, suppress, or extinguish, to blanket a fire, for example, with foam. Or cause to be included, be automatically blanketed into a program. And then there's blanket as an adjective, effective or applicable in all instances. So we have blanket rules, applying without distinction, blanket bans, prohibited everywhere, blanket statements, referring to every case. So how do we blanket with blankets to create a county blanketed in housing justice? 3 suggestions to end. First, we keep on with the small acts, gathering and distributing warm blankets, sleeping bags, and cold weather supplies for these freezing nights. If you have blankets to share, let me know. We also need a laundromat program to clean and dry the blankets. They're useless when wet. Second, we continue to voice our strong objection to blanket bans on resting in public spaces, blanket bans on camping in zones when no realistic shelter options exist, and we need to lobby for more effective approaches. And third, while collaborating with respect with all who are trying to respond to the lack of housing, we should blanket the county in indignation at bureaucratic processes that delay and the continuing challenges to coordinating effective emergency responses. So while touched by the power of the star-eaten blanket of sky and the image of the blanketing shelter of divine wings, I am more moved today by the image of an imperfect but strongly connected blanket of neighbors who offer other neighbors kindness, practical life-saving resources, and alliances on the way to gaining what all of us need, the blanket of safe and secure housing. Welcome everyone to the work. So thank you all for being here. We have a nice crew of folks and look forward to our conversation. And before we continue, some of you are new, so I want to just remind you of what our norms are. Rob usually puts them in the chat, so you can look there for them. And what we ask is that you mute yourself when you're not speaking, so we don't have that noise distraction. That you turn off the video as well if you're doing something that would I mean, some people talk with their hands, and so having a block, having this going on all the time is a little bit distracting. And then if you want to be recognized to speak, to use the raised hand function, or if you're calling in from a phone and don't have that capacity, to find some other way to get Rob's attention so he can recognize you. But the raised hand works the best. And then lastly, in terms of norms, we use the chat as a place for conversation, continuing interaction with one another, making connections that might happen outside this group, sharing resources and announcements. The chat is saved. You can save it yourself. It's also saved and available later to all those who participate. So with that, we'd like to invite anyone who's new today or coming back after being away for a while to just introduce yourself, and not anything lengthy, but if you're associated with a group, to let us know what that is. We are always interested in hearing from new groups or groups we haven't had present to us. So let us know who you are, and either I or Rob will recognize you. So let's do that for a few minutes and see where we get. Adam.
Good morning, everyone. Adam Reichenberger, he, him pronouns. It's just been a little while since I've been here, so I wanted to reintroduce myself and turn on my camera and smile at everybody. I'm the Housing Policy Coordinator at Tacoma Pierce County Health Department, so good to see everyone.
Thank you, Adam. Glad to have you back. Tyrone.
Hi, yeah, my name is Ty Moore. I'm a organizer with Tacoma for All, as well as Tacoma DSA. And yeah, I've been to a couple of these meetings a while back, but really glad to be back and excited to talk with you all a little later about the Tenants Bill of Rights ballot initiative that we're would love your support for.
Thank you, Ty. I'm glad to have you here. Devine.
Devine May from Pierce County Human Services. I run the PCCTC Coalition for Transportation, and I'm here to learn and get policies about the homeless population when there's a cold weather and climate functions and stuff like that.
Wonderful. I'm glad we're here. Okay. So if you didn't introduce yourself, but would like to let people know you're here, you can also do that in the chat and put any contact information if you would like to be contacted by someone who's doing similar work. So welcome, everyone. And Rob, I'll give it back to you.
Thank you, Rosemary, as always, for getting us centered at the beginning of every meeting. And it's great to see so many people here this morning, 70 folks in the room. So that's a good antidote to the cold morning. So let's get started talking about the cold morning regarding what we're seeing on the streets this week. For those who showed up a little bit early for this morning's meeting, we were holding our cold weather planning meeting, responding to the inclement weather. And I know we want to especially encourage folks who are doing outreach to share during this portion of the meeting about any particular needs or observations regarding what can be done by the 70 odd people in the room to help those who are currently trying to survive in 25-degree temperatures outside with wind chills that are in the teens. Open the floor. If anybody, you can just raise your hand or use the raise hand function, and I'll call on folks as you pop up, or I'll call on people just because I want to hear from them. It's random. All right, anybody have anything to share from the streets? Yeah, Jeffrey.
You'll have to forgive me, I haven't been out too much, but what I have seen are solo individuals moving carts back and forth, north and south on Pacific Avenue. With all these sweeps, I dare to think that there are so many solo people out there who don't have camps to be in. So I would say, please pay attention. If you see somebody solo, check in with them, find out where they're going, where they've been. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Others with observations? Thank you for call attention to what Melinda posted in the chat. And thank you for the work you're doing in the Fife area and Federal Way area. Jessica, anything that you would share from what your teams are seeing doing outreach right now?
I don't have anything really new to share. I think things are about the same. I mean, we're continuing to see more and more new faces. But with the cold weather, people generally hunker down. I am getting a lot, we're getting a lot more calls, a lot more referrals, a lot more people that are they're in desperation. But they don't want to go to the shelter. So a lot of people are asking for like motel vouchers and things like that. But we have been able to hand out a lot of items, and people have been calling for, sleeping bags, hot hands, things like that. So we was just trying to keep up with that.
Yeah. Any sense of where the new faces are coming from? Are you sensing people are being pushed out of Tacoma and into the county?
Tacoma and Fife is doing a pretty good push right now. So they're kind of just coming in, I guess. But also, honestly, with rental prices going the way they're going, we're just seeing, I mean, there's probably a good few new people every day that are being pushed out because, the family that used to pay for the low income apartment, now they're having to pay for the next price up. It's created a huge domino effect.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we appreciate the work you're doing, pushing that rock up a hill.
Yeah.
Jay, I see you have your hand up.
Jessica, I was just curious real quick. Have you used the hypothermia kits, or do you need any by chance? Or do you need blankets?
We have not used any of them, I don't believe. We'll always take some for sure. I think there's been probably 2 instances where we would have. So, I mean, they're always useful. Blankets are always useful. Everybody is, you know how it goes. It gets cold and then wet, cold, and then you're both and covered in ice. And so it just continually goes through its cycle. We need blankets, things like that always.
Please go ahead and talk to Paula. We're trying to get more of the hypothermia kits out and get an actual rate of how and if they will be used. If they
Okay.
stay in a site, we won't use them. The faster we get through them, the more we need them, the more we know we need them, the more we can prep them. So
Okay.
at this point, if we have it, use it.
Okay, awesome.
Kenneth?
Just going to double with Jay there and encourage trading, because we know that not every site is going to get hit the same way every week. So one week, one site will be hit harder than the other week. And as long as we're keeping track of those numbers of like what supplies we have, and we're actually like, if we have surplus this week or next week or last week, and we send those over to the place that's hurting, we build those relationships amongst each other as well.
I did want to call attention to what Toby posted in the chat about planned sweeps at 38th and 39th and Fife in Tacoma. So that'd be down in the Tacoma Mall area that are scheduled to be swept next Tuesday. So just raise that up. Thank you for that, Toby. And Jay.
I know, I'm sorry. I'm sure everybody's tired of hearing from me. So with the inclement weather listserv, it would be great if we could all hop on who does outreach, even if it's volunteer outreach. We're really missing our outreach in those meetings, and that's where we need the feedback on how many people we're serving, how many supplies we need to get out there, what we need to put at our staging sites, who has the most access to which staging sites, and what we can do to better support our network. Because we have Pierce County there, we have DEM, we're starting to really be able to build that support network, but we need the people that we're supporting. So if you have not, please go to Pierce County Homeless Listserv. I'll go ahead and add the link in the chat, and it would be great to see you guys there. If you feel that you can't make it to those meetings, it would be super awesome if you could, at a minimum, put in the listserv like once a day that you do or do not need supplies, that things are going well, or it is harder that day. The more feedback that we have in a generalized fashion, the more that we can support our community. So thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you, Jay. And anyone else who would like to share regarding what they're seeing on the streets? One thing I will add for some context. So every time we have cold weather in particular, when folks go to the Pierce County Coalition to End Homelessness website, pchomeless.org, the info@pchomeless.org email address comes to me. And I definitely am seeing an increase in the number of folks who are seeking help. So I just wanted to put a little bit of context in the fact that people truly are suffering out there right now. And to me, it's really a struggle to square what is being done to folks with things like sweeps during a time when people are already suffering from the trauma of homelessness and the trauma of the cold. So the whole thing is really troubling. And I really appreciate everyone here in the room who's doing what they can to help those who are going through what's doubly, triply hard time right now with the cold. I am hopeful that we will have warmer weather coming soon, but unfortunately we have a couple more cold nights ahead. All right, so appreciate there's a lot of good information about resources being shared in the chat. If you haven't visited the pchomeless.org website, I do keep a cold weather resources page linked there when we do have a cold weather situation. And that page has just a brief overview of the current forecasts, as well as information about warming centers that are available around the community, the latest information that we have available. So please do visit that, refer folks to it if it's helpful for them. And let me know if there are things that need to be listed there that are not currently. So let's move on. I wanted to do a brief reminder for folks that we do have the need and share spreadsheet that that Jay has been working hard on throughout this winter. Jay, I don't know if you have the potential to put that link again, excuse me, in the chat, but if you can't, I probably can too. That is a good way to let folks know if you do have a particular need or something that you're ready to share. That is a good place to do that. As well as if you have a very emergent need, then like Jay said, sign up for the inclement weather email list. Make sure it's not set to digest, because that really is an email list that is so that folks can respond to things immediately. And then we look forward to everybody helping there. And yeah, as Christine says in the chat, if you want to mention things that you need or things that you would like to share in the chat, Christine can grab those from the chat and put them into the spreadsheet for you. So there's no need to have to go to the Google Sheet. All right. So let's shift to our first conversation of the morning, and I'd like to invite Kenny Coble from the city of Tacoma to talk to us about participatory budgeting. And Kenny, do you need me to give you screen share capability for this conversation?
Yes, please.
All right, I will do that.
Are we good?
You have it now.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Kenny Coble. I work for the city of Tacoma. I'm here every week. Oh, Sally, I'm glad you're already smiling. Hi. I'm really nervous. I never have to speak during these meetings. I come every week because I really care about the work that you do. But I don't have to talk, so I'll see what I can do. But most of the presentations y'all receive are folks who are doing direct service. So this is going to be a little different. I'm going to try to take us on a really short journey in 5 minutes. I think by the end of the 5 minutes, we'll be on the same page of why I wanted to come here today. But if you're not aware, the city has started doing participatory budgeting, the longest, most convoluted phrase, but just try to keep it in your head, for maybe 3 years now. You may have noticed on the east and south end, we did $100,000 projects that were related to arts and science. And those projects went so well that City Council decided to use a portion of the America Rescue Plan money to bring participatory budgeting back. And for those of you who have never heard of that term, I would totally understand. It is a project that I get really excited about because it kind of flips how government sometimes works. Often, as an agency, right, it's our job to kind of know our community, know what it needs, make decisions on what our community members need, and then we just do it, build it, make it, program it, right? This kind of flips it and says, what if we set aside a portion of our budget? In a second, I'll tell you how much. I'm very excited about it. What if we set a portion of our budget aside to have residents decide how to spend? I have a fun job at the city as community engagement, something or other. I get to keep telling the city that we make better decisions when we listen to the people, right? Like, and I think everyone here is on board with that. We know that you know the context of the neighborhoods that you live and work in better than some of us who like sit at desks and are not as attached and not as close to the work as y'all are. And so I agree with the chat that's going on. And so this is a process that we kind of do over a year, and we work with residents and we keep asking them, hey, if you had this amount of money, what would you do? So we are doing 5 projects. For those of you who know this already, sorry, but Tacoma is divided up into 5 council districts, and we're going to do one of these projects in each of the 5 districts. We're starting on the east side, one, because that's a part of town, of course, that you all know has often been under-resourced, that historically has not been served in the way that it deserves and is equitable. And so we're starting there. And this is the part I'm really excited about. Council has set aside $1 million. So this is a real $1 million that community members are going to decide how to spend. And I'm just thrilled to go from 100,000 to $1 million. And I'm really hoping that these 5 projects are so successful that council and whomever makes decisions, I actually don't know, the decision makers decide this is strategic, this is effective. When people make the decisions themselves, they're fully bought in, they love it, they use the services that are created. So what I wanted to bring to y'all today, I haven't shared my screen yet, but if people have questions, I'll be able to show you what PB looks like. But essentially, it's a 5-stage process. We start by going to the community and asking, what would you do with $1 million? We're going to try to get as many votes as we can. We're hoping for like 1,000 from the east side ideas. So after we get those ideas of what people would want to do, we ask some community leaders. So city staff are not decision makers here. The community leaders take all those ideas, put them all in like one big bucket. Sorry, Rosemary, I'm breaking my hand gesture thing. But we have community leaders say like, wow, we got a bunch of ideas about a tennis court at Lincoln High School. Why don't we put that into a proposal where we'll work with city staff to make sure you can do that with $1 million. And then we're going to put it on a ballot. And on that ballot is going to be voted on in May. And whatever projects get the most votes are going to be what gets the $1 million. So everything is decided by East Side residents in this case. So for your awareness, the reason I'm here, it took me a second to get there, is because I wanted to tell you the ideas that we're hearing the most already. So we have about 700 or so far, 700 ideas so far, and we've been working with a lot of residents. The people who have participated the most, which I think is really exciting, has been Lincoln students. I would say more than half of our ideas already are coming from Lincoln students. They're very engaged. They care about their community. And the number one idea that we're hearing from residents, I don't think you'll be surprised, is our neighbors are really concerned and wanting to support and love our unhoused neighbors. So we're hearing about either sheltering of some sort or providing services. And the way participatory budgeting works is, you all know better than anyone, right? The city doesn't do direct service work as much as any of you do, right? So we would become a partner and would work with agencies that are working on the east side, and the money would go there so we could build the capacity of what folks like you are already doing. That's one way it could work. It can work any number of ways, but just to spark your imagination. So the ideas we're hearing the most are homeless services. We're hearing that tennis court was a real idea. Apparently Lincoln, my understanding is that Lincoln has an incredible tennis team, but doesn't have the same court or quality of courts that some other schools in our district have. And we're hearing about street improvements. I don't think that'll surprise people. And then we're hearing about park improvements. Like people want to see some of their parks like McKinley, like Clover Park, get kind of remodeled and spruced up with whatever you could do with $1 million. So what I'm going to ask all of you to do, I'm going to put this in the chat, and then I hopefully have time for some questions. If you live or work on the east side, I'm going to put, why don't I just do it now? I'm going to put a survey in the chat. It's in English and Spanish, and I would love for you to just play with it. Just try it out, submit an idea. Even if you don't live on the east side, you could still do it. The survey will stop you very quickly. They'll be like, whoa, wait, we'll work with you later. But you could try out that survey if you live or work on the east side in particular. And I would love for you to just spread the word. If you work with east side residents, if you work in that community, please share this and hear people's ideas. So that's one thing that you can do. The other thing I wanted to offer to all of you is, like I said, this is a community-led process. So we have a leadership team that are only community members that make all decisions, and then city staff facilitate it for them. So we work for them, which is always true, right? I serve my community at all times, hopefully. So the other thing I'd love to offer, if you live or work in District 2, we would totally invite you to be on our leadership team. For your awareness, we do compensate all members of our team. We give them a $50 gift card for every meeting we attend. This is a practice that I think is really important, that I hope all of you support the city doing more of. Like you folks are on our commissions, you're on our advisory teams. You are providing context that we could never have without you. And so we should be removing as many barriers to folks participating as possible, right? So hopefully, if folks want to use this for childcare, for food, for transportation, or for none of my business, those are all great reasons to be using that money. We want to remove those barriers. So if you live or work in District 4, you're definitely invited to be on that community leadership team. The thing that I think will impact maybe even more of you is the next project that we're doing. It hasn't started yet, so we're now recruiting for it. We're looking for community leaders to be part of our District 2. So District 2, for those of you who don't know, is downtown, Northeast Tacoma, the North End, but part of the North End. And I think this is almost all of you, probably. You are eligible to be on this team if you live or work. So if you serve people downtown, a lot of people experiencing homelessness, right, gravitate to that part of town for good reason, because that's close to where services are. You would totally be eligible. And the fun reason why you might want to be part of this is you get to help develop the outreach team. So you get to ensure that we're hearing voices of people like y'all who do this work. And you can help us work with people who are unhoused and directly impacted and could benefit most from a program like this. And I had something else to say about District 2. I don't remember what it was, but and then the other thing you would get to do is be part of the proposal making, which I think is the most important part of the project. You could say like, hey, I'm seeing a lot of requests for services to unhoused neighbors. I actually know the people who do that work in that part of town. I could connect you to them. I know we can make a proposal for $1 million, because there's been someone that says the only thing stopping them from opening up a new shelter, for example, or is they just needed someone to buy it for them. They already have the staff. They already have the ability to keep moving. The last piece we've needed is $1 million. So if you want to be kind of part of that co-creation process, working with other neighbors, working with city staff, I would invite you to do that. So the last thing I'll say, I'll just do a quick reminder of the East Side timeline. We're going to collect ideas for a couple more weeks. So whatever your $1 million ideas, put it in the survey. We're going to turn those ideas into proposals for about 3 months. And then in May, we're going to do voting. And I'm going to come back here probably and say, vote, 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 vote. There's no way you can cheat in this process. If you want to get every person you know, every single person who's passionate about serving unhoused folks, get them all to vote, flood the thing, and then that's what wins, right? The only thing I'll tell you is you're going to have a lot of competition with those students at Lincoln because they're extremely involved, but it sounds like they care about similar things that you do. So, Rob, I think I went a little over, but I'd still be happy to take questions if you have.
Yeah, that'd be great. Anybody have questions? And just so you know, I did drop a map of the council districts into the chat for folks. So
yeah,
that
short
page
is
is
side is 98404 and 98418. So Lincoln District and all of what a lot of us call the East Side.
yeah. Thanks, Teresa, for adding that map as well.
Oh, I have so many messages. Yes, stadium is in District 2. For the person who asked that, does it need to be a single project? Great question. That is going to be decided by the community leadership team. So once they have all the ideas, they could put them into proposals that are all $1 million, or they could make a bunch of different proposals that are at all kinds of cost levels. And if you are passionate about that and making that decision one way or another, then you should join our leadership team. Teresa, how about a student run with adult supervision laundromat with a voucher system? Yeah, great idea. Put it in the thing. The great thing about this is I'm not an expert on everything that we could do with $1 million by any means. I actually am extremely bad at understanding budgets, but we will be working with staff of people who would provide these services, of other agencies to kind of find out if they're feasible. And then, so Teresa, let's say that was one of the most popular ideas. We would find out if it's feasible, and then we would come back to you and the other community leaders and say, okay, well, it couldn't be student run. We would have to have adults run it. And then you could say, well, that's not in the spirit of what we're thinking. Can you go back to the drawing board, or can you find an element where students have a vital role? And then we go, okay. And then like, so we are going to always have to be like, well, that costs too much, or that's not legal, or this, and this. We'll handle the regulation stuff, but we'll keep coming back to you to kind of create it into what it needs to be. Were there, I might have missed other questions. Someone provided a map. Thank you. The website to follow up on things is essentially that survey link. But even better if you just email me, because I don't know, websites are hard. District 1, I can't update us yet on districts 1, 3, or 5. We haven't made decisions yet on what's next. Our team is really small, it's like 3 of us. So district 1 or 4 by itself has been a lot of work. This is kind of our, once we've done this, we'll really know how far we can get. I saw a question on, will there be tax on this money? I don't know how to answer that question because I don't know what money is, but the one thing I can confirm is that the entire $1 million will go to the project. So for example, like none of my salary is going to go to, none of my salary will be used. All of our meetings, public meetings always have food because we want to be welcoming and people need food because we have bodies. None of the money will go to admin or any of that stuff. We want the East Side to see that all of that $1 million went to them. Anything else we'll use whatever budget stuff happens at the city to make that happen. And yes to needing outreach volunteers.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Kenny. This is exciting. It's going to be interesting to see what ideas people come up with. Yeah, because $1 million seems like real money. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
So yeah. And if folks still have other questions, the chat's a great way to relay those. And
appreciate it. All meeting as I always am, and I'm going to be here every week as I always am. So if something occurs to you later, please reach out at any point. And it was really important for me to come here because I love the work that y'all do. I am not allowed to tip the scales in any way, but I would say I would love if a project from the voices here ended up on the ballot because I think people would really support it. So I would love to see folks here get involved. So thank you.
Thank you, Kenny. All right, so let's shift to our next topic. And this is going to be an overview of the new Tacoma for All ballot initiative. And Ty, am I turning to you to get us started on this, or is it Zev who's going to kick us off?
Both of us, but Ty's gonna share screen.
Awesome.
So it's good to be here again. This isn't the first time I've been on the meeting to talk about this. I'm Zev, I'm the staff organizer. For the campaign, last time I was here, I was talking with y'all about our action conference for tenants' rights, where we would vote on this initiative and whether to move forward with this campaign. I'm happy to report back that we had that action conference on February 11th, and we did decide to move forward with the campaign. There was around 100 people in that room, all really excited to push this thing forward and win expansion of tenants' rights in the city. So I also sent out emails with all the information on the initiative earlier this week, but I want to review it just one more time for anyone who's not super familiar. But we want to cap late fees and move-in fees and all of that good stuff. 6 months notice on rent increases and relocation assistance starting at 5%, with there being 2 periods of rent increases yearly on the 6-month notice. That means that landlords can increase rent up to 10% without having to pay any relocation. So that would be the intended cap. And prohibiting evictions for children and educators during the school years, and banning evictions during winter months for everyone. Yeah, I think this ties really well into what we do on this coalition. Research from the Department of Commerce suggests that for every $100 average increase in rent, there's a 6 to 32% increase in homelessness. Jessica was just talking about her clients facing economic evictions from rent going up and displacement. We also spend a lot of time on these meetings talking about cold weather response. One thing that would make cold weather response a lot easier is if there were 0 new people being displaced onto the street during those winter months. So that I just want to, Ty, what do you have to add?
Yeah, so we also have this website, Tacoma for All, that we've launched. We're going to be adding pages soon to give more information, but I just wanted to let people know a little bit about the process and the coalition we've built so far. We, to hit the timeline to be able to have enough time to gather signatures by mid-June. Technically, we need 4,200 or thereabouts valid voters signing, but since we know a lot of them are thrown out, we are aiming to get double that number. To give ourselves enough time, we had to file the initiative in late January, and actually we filed several versions of this. I think Zev sent you one of the versions with slight policy tweaks to give ourselves some flexibility about as we continue to have dialogue with coalition partners about some of the details of the policy. So if people want to deep dive with us about where we're going, we still have a couple options on that on the table. We filed that the city attorney approved the ballot titles, which is a part of the process, what people actually see when they go to the voting booth for the different versions in early February. There was a 10-day window that opened up for opposition to appeal. That 10-day window closed at the end of last week. So we are set to begin collecting signatures. And we have a kickoff event on March 4th to begin collecting signatures for this. As Zev said, the conference that we held on February 11th, I think, was a big success. The other thing I wanted to highlight on that is we had over 24 community organizations, labor unions, elected leaders, particularly county council members, endorsing it. And I mean, Patty Rose, who's Secretary Treasurer of the Pierce County Central Labor Council, spoke, as well as representatives of UFCW. Patty is working really closely with us to make sure we get solid labor endorsement. We fully anticipate the Pierce County Central Labor Council to endorse this ballot initiative at their upcoming meeting in mid-March. And we're hoping to get a lot of labor backing and funding as well for this, because it's going to take resources, because we do anticipate landlords getting organized and pushing back on this, as they have in other cities. The last thing I wanted to just emphasize about this policy is that none of this is stuff that hasn't been done in one variety or another in other cities. I'm going to stop screen sharing here. That has not been done in other cities. We worked very closely with Edmund Witter, who's the attorney and head of the King County Housing Justice Project, and has been at the center of developing policy for a number of cities and municipalities all around our region. And, all these policy, all the details were worked out in close dialogue with him and other housing experts. And he, said, basically, we took sort of a best of what other cities across our region have passed. Ed suggested, and we did, saying, making sure they were, the strongest, most coherent versions. Sometimes when it's gone through city council, they've been whittled down and little loopholes have been thrown in. And we did our best to make sure to have a sensible policy, but without easy loopholes. So I feel very confident in the sort of soundness of the policies. And we feel confident that voters will support it. So obviously we would love all of your support. I think it's not just for us, it's not just about winning these policies, which I think will have a significant impact, but it's also about using this campaign to build the broadest possible coalition and movement to make sure, because clearly, even if we pass all this, homelessness won't be solved, the housing affordability crisis won't be solved. That's going to be solved by an ongoing movement that can build the political power to really change policy in a more fundamental way in this city, which I know we all want. So we're optimistic and hopeful that, with all of your support and others, that we can use this campaign to help lay the groundwork for future work that will need to be done. That's it.
Awesome. So I'm sure some folks are going to have questions. I think a couple have popped up in the chat. Anybody who would like to pose some questions or comment? Yeah, Ryan, I see your hand up first.
Could you maybe go into some of the detail of the unjust evictions? I see in the text you talk about seniors. You can't eject a senior. A senior is going to be senior for years and years. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I want kind of explain what the policy means in regards to those, and then I have maybe a follow-up depending on what you say.
There's two different things, and it's totally easy to get confused. There's an outright ban on evictions of students during the school year. They can evict families during the summers, and there's an outright ban on cold weather evictions November 1 through March 1. So that's a powerful policy. What you're talking about with seniors, service members, et cetera, what that does is it adds these categories of folks to a list of who cannot be discriminated against. So it's not a ban on evicting seniors, but it is saying, if you evict somebody because they are a senior, just like if you evict somebody because they are Muslim or because they are a different color than you, that's against the law right now. We're adding some categories to say it's also a defense to eviction if you believe you've been evicted because you are a senior, because you are a service member. How often that happens, I don't know, but we felt it was important to add some of those policies there to add to the defense to eviction. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. And you said that these policies have been done in other cities. Do we have any idea what the long-term impact of particularly singling out specific groups for protections, does that affect their long-term ability to rent and get housing. Case in point, oh, you've got kids. Landlord's like, well, I don't want to rent to them because if I want to evict them on September 1st, I have to wait 9 months till they get out of school. Stuff like that.
That particular policy has been on the books in Seattle for several years, and I know it's folks who have been at the, on the front lines of housing justice work feel it's been one of the most powerful tools they've had, that I don't know, it's done a lot more good than any harm. I don't have, trying to build statistics around understanding landlord biases. I'm not going to be able to give you some hard facts that sort of document exactly the concern you're raising.
And I'm not trying to poo-poo the idea of protections. I'm just curious because, for every time it fixes a short-term issue for maybe a specific individual, but if it hurts, that class of individuals in the long term. And I'm just wondering if there's been any analysis or any kind of data collection on that. So thank you.
I'll just say, these kinds of questions of, protecting certain classes of folks from being singled out for protections, or certain eviction protections for certain categories, these have been debated and discussed. And I know the issues that you're raising are not new to the folks of raising. And I think I think it's hard to build statistics around document exactly the impact of landlord bias on these questions. But I think the general conclusion around the country, because this is not just unique to our region, has been that the net gain outweighs, sort of a somewhat hard to measure potential for problems. But I think is a good question.
Thanks, Ty. And Teresa, I see you have your hand up. Well, I choked to death.
So this is a follow-up, basically, to that same question. I really appreciate that Zev has responded to my concerns about this, but I just want to say it into the room that I think whenever certain groups are singled out and others are not, it is actually playing into the hands of people who would like to be divisive around this issue. I really do hope that in the future you will just do things that are everyone. For instance, my heart is very much with people who have been incarcerated, and they are one of the groups that are the most discriminated against when they try to get housing. Well, the fact that they don't have school children doesn't, it feels as if the same thing that happened during the civil rights era, where the idea of one group having special protections and others not having special protections actually served to divide us as a community. So I don't like that part of this initiative, and I understand what you're saying about it might be helpful for some people, but I also think that it's a divisive thing to do.
Thanks for that feedback, Teresa. And any other final questions for Ty and Zev? So how would you like to close it out, Ty?
Well, just to answer that, obviously, well, I do see one other person anyway, obviously, that's, I think, a fair debate, to have. On the other hand, I just, I think this is building on, the foundation of this law of saying, certain groups are given legal protection for discrimination. And I would, I guess, while being totally respectful of those concerns, just stand by. Like traditionally, people have been singled out for the color of their skin or for their religious affiliation or things. And so those are already on the books as protections. You can't evict somebody because they're Black. You can't evict somebody because they're of a particular religious affiliation. And there is a lot of documented examples of landlord racism and of people, there's still evictions profoundly impact communities of color more than they impact white folks. So I think there is a reality to discrimination, and there's sort of a whole legal framework, not just for housing protection, but in lots of other fields that have been built up. So this is strengthening that. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, but I hear you. And we actually have one of the versions of this ballot initiative that we still have the option of going with takes all that out. So if that was like a stopping concern for a lot of people here, we actually have the option, have to decide in the next week before we start collecting signatures, but we have the option of going with a version of this that doesn't include all of that. So we did take that into account, just to let Teresa know.
Thanks, Ty. And we have 3 more folks with their hands up, and then we'll need to move on to the next item on our agenda. But Dr. Jarvie, we'll start with you.
So I've asked a couple times, and I'm still fixating on the word unjust. And it's a big concern for me, because I believe a lot of things are unjust, and my unjust is very different from a lot of other people's unjust. And so I'm uncomfortable with using that word in the document, because it requires a definition. It requires someone said, who decides what's unjust and what's not. So it's really important, if we're going to use a word like unjust, justice, social justice, those kind of words, they have to be defined. They have to be clearly defined, and they have to have somebody who some group or some structure that decides what is just and what is unjust.
So in the context of this initiative, that is referring directly to the school year evictions and the winter evictions. So it is pretty well defined here. But I think when we put this on the ballot, people are going to be caring about like what are the policies rather than the descriptors that we've used in the initiative language.
Thank you for raising that. And Rosemary, I see your hand up next.
So I wanted to just ask about the question of uninhabitable dwellings and the inability to raise rents in those places. I was a little confused because I assumed the law about not being able to live in uninhabitable dwellings would have there'd be already a code that would have managed that. So I wasn't quite sure the need to have this emphasized again here, and just a brief description of that would help.
Thanks, Rosemary. So one thing that we did as part of like forming this initiative was just talk to a lot of tenants, canvas lots of big apartment buildings to see what tenants wanted in this initiative and what was affecting their lives. And the fact is, a lot of people in this city, a lot of renters are living in like slum conditions in buildings that would, otherwise might be condemned if there was some sort of like government enforcement body like checking on these things. That doesn't exist, and the rental market is highly unregulated at this point. We believe that adding this to the initiative will give some legal recourse to tenants in those positions, and put pressure on landlords to make sure that their dwellings are up to standards. We do think and this is something that we've discussed, that if we pass this, it'll create the opportunity to then lobby city council to create a body to enforce this at the city level. Or it might need to be another initiative in the future, but this is kind of a first step towards providing some more regulation on living conditions in rental properties.
Thanks, Zev. And Jan.
Hi, I just wanted to bring up a point that I was concerned about, that sometimes I think that well-meaning proposals can lead to unintended consequences. And the case in point that I would like to make is that there's actually some good landlords out there, and there's actually some bad tenants. And one of the things that I see happening is that over the years, when LASA has tried to help somebody with questionable credit and history, et cetera, get into an apartment, we've always gone to the smaller private landlords. If we make life so difficult on these small private landlords, they're beginning to exit the field. And I really would think that you might want to get the voice of a couple of folks like that before you think in terms of cutting them off with not allowing them control of their property for 6 months at a time. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. And go ahead, Ty.
Yeah, one thing to actually clarify, there are some exemptions in this for small landlords. For any landlord who is, lives in the same building up to or owns just a fourplex. So the genuinely small landlords, they are exempted from not all the policies, but they still have to give the 6-month notice, et cetera. But so I do think, we took some care to, try and, recognize that, yes, not all landlords are equal. I mean, most of these policies, I think, if you're a good and fair landlord, if you are, generally, and I know I've been a landlord myself at certain times. I owned a duplex, and I tried to do right by my tenants and be reasonable with rent hikes and things like that. So I think most of this is stuff good landlords are already doing. This is sort of designed to deal with the fact that there is also lots of bad landlords out there, or landlords who are just so narrowly focused on trying to make a buck that they're cutting corners and harming people on the way. And mainly this is what impacts them. Mainly this is going to impact that latter category.
Yeah, thank you, Ty. And so 2 more questions, and then we're going to need to wrap up this so we can move on with our agenda. And Jay, I saw your hand up, so you're part of the 2. Oneida, though, I see your hand up next. And you're muted right now. There you go.
Thank you. I know this group works primarily with shelters for unhoused people, but ultimately we have to have permanent housing for people. And I think, I don't know the divisiveness that was spoken of, but I'm African American, people coming out of incarceration, they're parents too. They've got children also. And I think we have to start somewhere to push this issue. People are getting pushed out of their housing because of the extraordinary rent hikes. And yes, I feel for the small home or landlords, but many of these things are happening with corporations. So I think this discussion is good because it can help Tyrone and Zev go back with information. But I think we need to support it as a group. We don't need to be divisive. But and once again, I think your questions are very important. We probably need more time on this. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for that. And Jay, you had a question as well?
More of a 2 cents moment. So from somebody who has lived in a slum apartment on 8th and M in Tacoma in the past by a landlord who no longer owns that property, so we don't really need to worry about this now. When I had cockroaches and shared a 1-bedroom apartment with my entire family because we were having a problem beforehand, so that landlord took advantage of us without us signing a lease to us. I cannot tell you, as somebody who's been in a crisis, jumping and being taken advantage of by somebody else because their capitalistic nature makes it imperative for them to do so. There are good landlords that I've had that have worked with me completely through every crisis I went through while I was living there and all the problems that I've had. There are both sides of that coin. The good landlords need to be protected, and they would also have the ability to work with the tenant because they would understand them. The corporations need to stop feeding off of people. We need to kind of bully those corporations a bit and tell them, no, you are not allowed to continue to harm people that are just living their life. You can no longer raise rents to make poverty level a six-figure income. We are currently getting to the point where 100,000 a year, 100,000 grand a year is literally poverty. How did we get to a six-figure income being poverty? It is those corporations that this would end. It's those corporations that we would bully with this. It's them that we need to reach. And the only way to reach them is through money and things like this, initiatives.
Thanks, Jay. And yeah, I see some hands going up. Thank you for that. So appreciate you coming this morning, Ty and Zev, for the presentation. As you can tell, it's a robust conversation. We're going to actually go into breakout conversation in a little bit around the initiative and people's other thoughts as well. And be happy to provide that kind of feedback as well. I know you guys, the initiatives, the versions are written, the signatures are about to be gathered, so that's where we're at. But anything we can do to help frame the conversation and movement going forward, would be happy to do that.
Rob, can I take 2 seconds to just wrap up and promote something going forward?
Yeah.
I super appreciate the discussion today, and feel free to respond to my emails and reach out if you have any. I know there are like people with questions here, so email us. We do respond. And yeah, I think the discussion's been great. I'll say just generally, like, I think on this policy, like there are going to be, some corner cases where this is, this is going to be a bad thing. But I think that's true for almost every policy, and we don't build policy for the corner cases. We build it, and right now we're building it to confront, a huge housing crisis in the city. So I know, this is a divisive issue. We understand that. We understand that there's going to be people in the city and, on this call who are both for, against it, or somewhere in the middle. If you are, someone who's really inspired by this and wants to be involved, our canvassing kickoff is on March 4th, a Saturday coming up, I guess a week from tomorrow. And that's where we're going to be doing like training on how to canvass, how to talk about this initiative, and start gathering all those signatures that we need to get this on the ballot. So thanks again. And yeah, look forward to hearing some more questions from y'all.
Thank you. All right, so because of that robust conversation, we are going to shuffle the agenda just a little bit. I'm going to have our folks from government agencies that are here do their updates, and then we will move into our overview of last week's breakout and this week's breakout conversation. So let's get started with Caleb. I see you're on screen. Do you want to offer some updates from the city of Tacoma?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. A couple of project updates with Brotherhood Rises micro shelter across from their center, 23rd, 21st, and MLK. They are currently, it looks like they're just finishing with drywall to finish those units, and then power has been to the site. We will finish connecting the power to the units, and then they will be ready to go. I don't think we're going to, I'm going to try to squeeze in maybe a small open house, but we might not be able to with just the timing of everything. So that might not happen. I know we've done that in the past for folks, but I know they're eager to get started. And I know a lot of us are also eager. So, but if you would like updates or would like to talk about the project, please feel free to reach out to me individually. I'll put my contact information. As a reminder, that's going to be a 16-unit site with up to 32 individuals served. And it will be micro shelters. All hygiene will be on there, 24-hour oversight at that. And it will also have some of the services from the center, including mental health, case management, access to food, and then it'll have laundry, showers, and portable toilets on site as well. So we look forward to that starting, and we are hoping that is in the next week or so. And then Holy Rosary, touched base with Alan this morning. They are still hiring staff and working through that process. But we're hoping to get that going as soon as possible so that we have safe parking at Holy Rosary. This is 20 vehicles or up to 40 individuals. Families and singles will both be served here. And then as a reminder, after 90 days, we will actually assess whether we can add recreational vehicles to the site, which I know is all a huge need across the city. And so those are two big updates for our shelter projects. The last one is that on March 14th, we do have a homeless service update to the City Council for study session. We are trying to also include part of that is with the TMC 819 update is scheduled to be that next month. So we are hopefully going to have some update on that as well on some of the assessing parts of that municipal code. So that might be a little bit might be happening in that first update, depending on how much data we can gather and implement. But we will talk about some of the strategy and things that are happening within neighborhood and community services and the homeless strategy, and how we're trying to align ourselves more with and continue to align ourselves more with the county, with the affordable housing action strategy, and some of the other strategies that are being implemented throughout the city. So that will be on Tuesday, March 14th, is that update during study session.
Thank you, Caleb. Any quick questions for Caleb before we move to the next speaker? Yeah, Teresa.
Hi, Caleb. How is the new site on Pack Avenue doing, and are there any needs with that site?
Thanks, Teresa, for that question. I don't have any specific needs right now. Right now with that site, they have had to, they do now have a business trailer, so they're able to continue to staff up some of those services to help folks exiting that shelter. I know they had some early successes, so they hopefully will be able to help with those folks that's transitioning into more affordable housing options and housing just in general. So right now that they're still working out a lot of kinks in terms of, you know, how to engage with that community specifically. It's still a very tight community because it was 34th and Pacific encampment. And so that has been, you know, some of the good things that have come out of that, to realize that this is a very tight community. They do work very close with each other. As I've been there a couple of times, they are great at vocalizing their needs, specifically directly to the city. They feel very comfortable engaging with us and the provider. So we are still continuing to build that rapport with them as we continue to work on all of their needs and best solutions as possible. If there are specific needs, you can always reach out to Tacoma Rescue Mission. They do have a CAC meeting, a community advisory committee once a month. That is on our website, and I will actually post that too as well, that you can always join to talk about some of the specific needs that they may have, and to discuss some of the needs that the neighbors have, because it's mostly made up of neighbors, but we always like other folks to be there too as well.
Thanks, Caleb. And Chiquata, I see you have your hand up.
I'm sorry. I had meant to give you, hi everybody, I'm Chiquata Elder, landlord tenant coordinator for the city of Tacoma. I wanted to let you all know that, as you may know, the city of Tacoma is in the process of updating our rental housing code that we currently have. So we will be sending out a survey. We're starting to promote a survey that will be active today, later this evening, or either early Monday morning. And so we're asking housing providers, tenants, community members to do the survey. But then the way this group can help is because we're going to do targeted outreach too. We're looking to partner with groups such as yourself to have like a targeted meeting, so that we can get input on like a focus group type thing. So, and we'll be having community events on the 23rd, which will be in person, and then a virtual one on March 30th. So be on the lookout. We'll be pushing that through social media. We'll be pushing it, city's website. If anybody's a landlord, they'll be getting that through our business license. You'll get the information through the business license, but we want to be very intentional on getting everybody's input and making sure everybody's voices are heard. So be on the lookout for that, and we look forward to working with you guys. And if you guys are interested in holding a special meeting for this group, we would greatly appreciate if you guys will let me know that. So thank you, and I'm open for any questions. If you guys wanted to contact me, I'll put my information in the chat. Thank you.
Awesome.
Sorry, Rob.
Yeah, awesome.
I was trying to
No
do
problem.
2 things at one time, and I forgot to email you earlier asking if I could do it. So
I am juggling so many things these days. I totally get it. So
okay.
One request is if you do send that survey link to the coalition mailing list, that goes out to about 700 people.
Okay.
Not super targeted necessarily just to landlords, but you know, as you heard from the previous conversation, if you were listening in around the initiative, there's folks who do have who are landlords who do attend these meetings. So hopefully it can be some good input for you.
Yeah, we want to get the housing providers side. We want to make sure we get how it's impacting the tenants too, because I know that there's stuff that we're trying to propose in our code that are being addressed at the state level. And if it passes at the state level, then that's good. If it doesn't, then we still have to look at it in Tacoma. And I know that the tenants Bill of Rights is also being addressed in the city right now too. So we just want to be mindful and let everybody's voice be heard. And so I will get that information out. And again, if you guys please, if you want to host a session to where like this group, we're able to just tailor it to you guys and get your feedback, that would be great. In addition to the other community ones that we're having. And thank you guys again.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's shift over to see if Jeff Rogers from Pierce County Human Services has any updates to share this morning.
I don't have any updates for this morning.
All right. Well, we're glad you're here regardless. How about the folks from the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department? You're muted for some reason. I mean, I can hear you, but it's like real choppy. Did you put your mic in your scarf maybe? Now I can't hear you at all.
No, not at all. No. Well, we can hear you, but ever so slightly now. Okay, yeah. So I'll go ahead and go while Jenny fixes her troubleshooting issues. So I know we have some new people here. So I am Isaiah Cocroft, and I work for TPCHG as the Environmental Health Homeless Liaison. So just for those that don't know me. Today I am on camera because I'm feeling extra special today, because usually I am off camera because I'm looking like a mess, but today you're getting a little extra special something. So happy to be here. So just to be clear, we are still activated. The Environmental Health Division is still activated until Tuesday due to the cold weather. So we're going to be monitoring the forecast for the next couple days and just reevaluate when it comes down to Tuesday. But for now, we're still going to be activated into the off normal, which is our lowest level of activation for those that don't know. So yes, at least through Tuesday. As Adam mentioned. So Adam is my supervisor, and he will be our incident commander during this activation since Cindy Haverkamp is currently off in Texas right now. On top of that, just some general information. So next week we will be having some data for those that are interested. It should be here Monday. I can't promise that because ABD, there is a lag time in collecting data, but we should have some general sketches around, like, you know, where folks are going into hospitals or any kind of ED visits, what they're going in for, that kind of information that could be really helpful. So I'm happy to share that in this meeting, or I'm happy to share that in the listserv as well during the inclement weather listserv. On top of that, we still have our hypothermia or frostbite information. So that's on our website. I can put that in the chat as well. We also have an infographic, which just gives a little brief demonstration of like what to do during, you know, the early onset of hypothermia or frostbite. On top of that too, we still have some cold weather entry cards, which for those who don't know are super small. This little cards that can go in your wallet. which talk about things like immersion foot, hypothermia and frostbite. That's really handy. That can go inside of a wallet or a purse or a pocket or whatever. We gave some to DEM for their hypothermia kits, but we still have plenty to give out. So if folks would still like them, especially those that are doing outreach, I'm happy to swing by and drop those off sometime today. Yes, I talk really fast. I'm really sorry. I just am a fast talker. So if there's any questions for me, please ask me some questions, because I just talk really quick. I'm just like boom, boom, boom. We're gonna get all this going. So I'm happy to slow down and reiterate anything that maybe was missed during my quick speeches.
Thanks, Isaiah. I take it as enthusiasm that you speak, and it's, you know, the sunshine's lighting you up and spotlighting you, so it's the whole thing.
Right. Exactly.
All right, and Jenny, did you get your mic situation figured out?
I don't know,
Anything you needed
maybe.
to share? You did.
Can you
You
hear me
did.
now? Okay.
Yeah.
And I did dare to leave my house today and come to a coffee shop. So there's like a vibe going on here that I hope is not too distracting. I will definitely try to go through these updates quickly. I gave an update on the inclement weather meeting at 8:30, just reiterating the position of the health department. We know that priority is we want to save lives from the cold. We support you all. We know that shelters are going to potentially be at full capacity or more. And we also support folks being admitted, new guests being admitted, even if there's a COVID outbreak. Thankfully, community spread of COVID is currently really low, and we've had minimal outbreaks in the shelter system in the last several months. We're very grateful for that. And we focus on preventing and controlling spread of disease. I'm in constant contact with the shelter folks and giving them information on how they can do that. I wanted to address a question that came up about vaccines. We do not recommend that shelters require proof of vaccination as criteria for entry. This is in alignment with the CDC. I will share our vaccine page with folks. As always, we have been doing shelter-based clinics for folks, and we still have community clinics going on. We also still have testing support, so I'll share the testing team information. We have test kits available for folks. We also can arrange mobile testing in some cases. There is also, this was just launched, a kiosk in Spanaway, a Washington project. It's called Test and Go, and I will share some information about that. Also wanted to mention our isolation and quarantine support is still available. We have 2 adult family homes that have 11 beds, and with the process has not changed. The number to call, I will share in the chat. It's 253-820-4684. If someone needs a safe place to quarantine or isolate, you can call for an assessment and a placement during business hours. And if outside business hours, I just really encourage folks, again, I am always in the ear of our shelter partners, so they know how to do the best job they can to keep people safe and to isolate in place if needed. And I will also share the latest CDC guidance for folks that want to dig into that a little bit more. I know some of you are interested in those things, and CDC has some really nicely worded and organized guidance that came out in November. One thing I just want to mention is the CDC in November did make a change in their guidance around masking to recommend that masking is done obviously during times of outbreak, but also only at medium or high levels of community spread. And DOH and thus TPCHD takes a little bit more conservative approach. We want folks, if there's a medium level of community spread of COVID, to be masking. And I also want to stress, and I stress this to the shelters, because we have had low levels of COVID in the community, that it is always the prerogative of a shelter to insist on a more kind of conservative approach to masking. I know it's not always easy to do that, but that's always in the realm of what they can do to keep folks safe. And certainly if anyone's symptomatic, has symptoms, that should be a practice. That is it from me, and I'll share things in the chat as I usually do. Any questions?
Not seeing any hands shoot up. Enjoy the coffee shop.
Thank you. And I will monitor the chat for the rest of the meeting. Thanks all.
Perfect. And any updates from Pierce County Department of Emergency Management? And it's fine if you don't have an update.
Hi, no, we don't have anything else, no other update. We have some blankets and we'll look at the spreadsheet to see where those might be needed and coordinate pickup here if they're needed.
Perfect. Thank you so much, and thanks for being here. All right, so let's shift back to the items that we were going to cover at the end of the last hour, and that is a review of last week's breakout conversation, and then we'll spend a few minutes in a breakout of our own today. So Timothy, would you like to talk about the document you provided? Yeah, and I'll share it on screen.
Ready to roll.
Awesome.
So last week we talked about best resources that we use when we encounter folks in distress, what's helpful, what hasn't been. Oh crap, you did that thing. Can you take it off of full screen for a second?
Oh, sure.
I had my notes on my screen and now I can't see them. Okay, I'm just gonna move that over there. And now I'm good. You can put it back on.
Okay, perfect.
So we began, as always, with a little poem from Rosemary, just to show our appreciation for all the work that she does setting these meetings up every time, and to convey a little bit of the thoughtfulness that she puts into it. And then there is Woot, which, since I do this, I can do pretty much what I want. And I've decided that's going to be the new feature in the notes. And getting to the discussion, people talked about what makes for effective outreach. People always kind of do with these questions what they will, and that's where this went. And some of the principles of effective outreach that people mentioned were consistency, that it's important to over communicate, that we be conversational, that we show respect to them as people and present ourselves as equals. Talked about that concept of joining, and also, treating their locations with respect and understanding that that information in the wrong hands can be harmful. And then people talked about some barriers to helping and how sometimes grant requirements and stuff can be, getting data gathering can be awkward when you're trying to build rapport. And then that the resources are constantly changing, and the end of some important resources and shortages of others. There's a short list there of things that people identified as resources that they find most valuable. And next, there are a few spaces that people identified in the notes that you can check for open beds and may be able to find them. And then finally, a group talked about organizing some sort of event with testimonials and building some better community understanding. And I'm actually willing to work on that. So if that idea resonates with anybody, just kind of send me something in the chat and I'll be in touch with you. And then, as always, links and notes from the chat that I just put there for posterity. And that's it.
Awesome. All right, let me stop the screen share. And thank you, as always, for putting that together, Timothy. And that's getting to be quite a list of really useful information at the end of that every week. So appreciate it. All right, so for today, for today's conversation, in the breakout rooms, we thought it would be good to carve out a little bit of time for everybody now that you've heard the presentation about the Tacoma for All initiative around renters' rights, to have conversation in small groups about thoughts, concerns, comments that come up. As you'll recall, we can supply this information to Zev and Ty so that it might be able to help inform their efforts to get signatures as that starts on March 4th. But again, just a reminder, these breakout conversations they're meant to serve two purposes. One is just to provide some networking opportunity for folks, and for folks to get to know each other a little bit better. And then also just to be able to have a brief conversation and share some comments about the topic. So I'm going to set up the breakouts. And as a reminder, if folks can assign somebody in the room to take notes, that would be helpful so that we can share those in the chat at the end, and Timothy can put together his summary again. Let's see, we are at 10:29 already, so I think we're going to do a little shorter breakout. We'll do about 10 minutes. So we'll come back here at 10:40. And away we go.
And then we'll work with them on that to make sure we get people in that need to be in. My first thought is this will be for elderly and disabled folks that,
right.
Yeah. And then because we do have quite a bit of money in supplies still. It's just a question of getting those supplies and then distributing them. And then I was away getting a few supplies when someone mentioned that someone needed those hypothermic kits that were delivered. I think we have 11 of them, if I'm not mistaken, some 10 to 11. Is everybody coming back now?
Yeah, they are.
Okay. Can you text me on who that was, and they're welcome to come here before 4, pick those up.
Will do.
Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for hopefully that was a good conversation. I know it was a shorter period of time than usual, but please, whoever was designated to take notes in your room, if you could paste your comments and questions and thoughts related to our topic today into the chat, that would be great for Timothy to pull together later today. And yeah, sorry you came back and Paula Anderson and I were talking shop a little bit. So appreciate everybody's patience there. So we've got about 19 minutes left in our appointed time today. So real quickly, I want to go through some of the items that are remaining on our agenda. First of all, the only update I really have related to the Pierce County Comprehensive Plan to End Homelessness is that members of the advisory board are currently working, and I'm going to be doing this right after this meeting, to provide some final comments back to the Pierce County Council regarding the Pierce County Village project down in Spanaway. So just wanted to let folks know that that is still happening. I will let you know next week regarding the future meetings of the advisory board for the comp plan, and what exactly is happening, if anything, with the unified regional approach and all those other updates regarding what's happening with Pierce County's comprehensive plan. So more to come on that. In terms of advocacy updates, boy, I could easily fill the last 15 minutes of the meeting with advocacy updates. I will admit I've been a little bit distracted this morning because one of the rent stabilization bills that the Housing Alliance has been working with partners on in Olympia is facing a fiscal cutoff today. And so we're expecting a vote on, this is substitute House Bill 1389, which is the rent stabilization bill that was sponsored by Representative Rammel from the 40th district up in the Bellingham area. There's been a lot of work and advocacy to try to move that bill through the Appropriations Committee at the House, so that it can move on past this deadline today. We should have news about that later this afternoon. And I will paste the link in the chat for the housing and homelessness advocates update that we do every Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock for the Housing Alliance. I'll put that in the chat if you would like to join this afternoon's meeting and find out what happened. And here, let me quickly, do that before I forget. All right. So that's the link for this afternoon's meeting from 2 to 3 with updates on the Housing Alliance priorities and how they're going in Olympia. Other advocacy updates, you heard from Caleb that coming up on March 14th, study session will be a presentation and update from the city of Tacoma on their homelessness plan and efforts. They're also this coming Tuesday, although not directly related to homelessness, unfortunately, in the eyes of many in the public, it is related, and that's an update from the police chief on property crime in Tacoma. So it may be worth listening to if you want to tune into that study session Tuesday at noon. Also wanted to remind folks that this coming Tuesday at the city council meeting, they are hosting community forum again. So that is an opportunity to raise up the issues of affordable housing and homelessness at the city council level. You can make comment on anything that's under the city council's purview during that, I believe, hour-long session of community forum. It only lasts an hour if they have enough folks to fill the hour. So if you do have an interest, that would be a great place to raise up the issues of sweeps and homelessness and what we're seeing happening in our community before our eyes right now. Anything that I'm missing, Sally, that you think would be good to call out? No? Okay. Yeah, there's just a ton of things happening around advocacy, especially once you spread things out to the state and national level right now. So sorry if I seem a little distracted sometimes. Let's move on to updates from the Safe Sites for All committee. Jan, anything you want to share?
Safe Sites for All has been busy with the weather. So outreach teams, collaboration between DEM, other government agencies, outreach teams, and shelters. So please go to Jay's inclement weather listserv. That's been valuable. And we can get stuff from here to there if we know who needs what and who has what. Anybody is welcome. Pleased to meet Jennifer in the room from Elam Evangelical Free Church down in South Hill. Yay, there you go. So everybody's welcome to our Monday noon Zoom. You register on the website. Glad to hear that there's more safe parking sites available. Also, we are going to have our first of the month social this next Thursday. So we're not even meeting again. So next Thursday is March the 2nd. A big success story that we have as a coalition is to help St. Vincent de Paul put in a resource center. So anybody doing outreach, either paid agency folks or volunteers, you can go to St. Vincent de Paul 5 days a week when the resource center is open. Come next Thursday at St. Vincent de Paul on South 56th, close to the Tyler Avenue intersection, 4:30 to 5:30. And then after 5:30, meander on over across the street to Montezuma's. They've got a bar there. We'll find something to drink. Okay, thank you. Paula, do you have anything?
We have plenty of safe parking spots open. So if you have people that want to do that, and I just want to share a quick good news story. Yesterday, I got an email, and this just shows how we all work together and how some things can just lickety split come together, and you're helping a 69-year-old woman who has a dead battery. And I had a team that was willing to run out there and bring her a battery so that she could stay warm. She had a sleeping bag, as many people in vehicles do. We have passed out quite a few of those sleeping bags that we purchased last time with the inclement weather money to people in their vehicles because they don't have a place to go inside. And we were able to get her a battery so that she could move on. Now she's getting ready to do the intake and go into a safe parking site. She's stage 3 cancer survivor and super excited about getting into safe parking. So yay team, we had a success story.
I was gonna say, you're a little ahead of our agenda with a success story right there. That's perfect. All right, any other coalition committee updates? Rosemary?
You know, this is like a committee, so I'll count it that, but the Revenue for Housing group, that's a work group, has been trying to get the 0.1% for housing passed at the city council, at the county council level. And we have 2 more Tuesdays, one February 28th, and then the day of the vote, which is March 7th, that we really need a couple of folks willing to express their concern and to support the tax. We're particularly looking for individuals who may live in District 1, 2, or 3, which tend to be our more rural areas. And really, it's important that those representatives who haven't yet supported the tax hear from constituents. So you can see my email in the agenda for today. And if you are at all willing, it would be sometime from 3 o'clock next Tuesday. And then from March 7th, we're looking for anybody who would be willing to be giving testimonies. That'll be important for us to have a show there. So we have a meeting on Monday morning, the 27th of this group. If you're wanting to participate in that, let me know as well, and I can send you the information. But I'm really looking for a couple of folks who are willing to share their testimony on the importance of a tax that will allow us to raise more money to support the building of housing that we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. Yeah, that time lag between the end of December when this was last considered and March 7th has really turned out to be quick. So yeah, it's going to take a full community effort again to move that forward. So now we have an opportunity for any good trouble announcements. Anything for the good of the order that folks would like to share with the 40 of us who are still on the call? Yeah, Zev.
Yeah, there's a rally in support of the trans community this Sunday at noon. Would be cool to see some of y'all there. There's definitely a lot of overlap, as providers will know, with trans community and homeless issues. So yeah, and that's at noon at Tolson Plaza, I believe, on Sunday.
Yeah, I think that's right. Noon at Tolson Plaza. Yep. Great, thank you for that, Zev. Other items for the good of the order? All right, and we already had Paula share a success story with us. Does anybody else have another success story they'd like to share to close out today's meeting? Yeah, Teresa.
I want to say that the inclement weather meetings are a success story. I have been attending those. I don't attend them all. I try to attend as many as I can, and I would others would be welcome who do outreach of any kind. It's a great place where people can bring up a single person, which we don't really have the capacity to do in this group, but they can say, I ran into this person. As Sally brought someone into the conversation, others have brought Richard's brought people into the conversation. Others have brought people, and then it's like a team effort to think about what can be done. I think that's got some real potential, and especially during the really cold days, it can be life-saving. So I've appreciated watching some of the things that have fallen into place. When someone says, I saw somebody here, will you check? And someone else checks, and then someone else contacts them. It all kind of works out. That's a success.
Yes, it is. And thank you for raising that up. And all right, so we are at 10:53. I can't believe it, but I'm going to give you 7 minutes back. So thank you everyone for being here. If you have an interest in helping plan next week's meeting, we're going to do that here after a 5-minute break. But for the rest of you, I hope everybody has a safe weekend. Stay warm, and we'll see you all next Friday.